And they say, how is it that your daughter thinks like this and is acting like this? Mrs. Hadjock said, every night when the lights were out and the streets were empty, we would take our family down into the cellar. We would open the Bible. We would read from the Bible, and we would wash our children's minds of the filth that had been put in them that day at school.
Whoa.
Every single day.
I'm spending money like I just got paid. $100 bills, tell them keep the change. Come on.
We have to have that level of intentionality. Otherwise, our children's minds are going to be forged.
If pop a bottle about to make it rain, let me give you something now to celebrate. Come on.
Can we really expect a government school to teach children the truth?
And if you're wondering why I move the way I do, I just feel so good.
What you're looking for is people who think sufficiently independently that they are even willing to challenge their own tribe. Because you can still protect your kids from the mind war if your kids are going to public school. It's just that much harder to do. Realize that homeschooling is not a cure-all. Plenty of parents.
The following is an episode of WardRadio and does not represent the thoughts or the opinions of KHTS, its owners, or any of its affiliates, nor does it represent the official opinion of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to WardRadio. I'm your host, Cardinellis. I'm joined in the studio by Connor Boyack, prolific author of a book, Mind Wars, teaching us how to avoid deception in an age of manipulation. Actually, a children's book that teaches us how to teach our children, and inherently thus ourselves, how to avoid some of this really pernicious, I don't want to say mind control because it sounds too conspiracy laden, but really effectively that's what it is, right? So in the first half of this show, we talked about kind of the history of Bernays and of public relations and of all these bad actors that would have us abandon our ideals and our money and our human relationships in order just to get addicted to their stuff and their ideas. And we laid the groundwork for what the battlefield is, but now he's going to actually show us how to protect our minds from these bad actors, these bad movements, these bad ideas. So, how do we do that, man? How do we avoid deception in an age of manipulation?
So I think one of the first things we have to do, Cardin, is we have to realize what the deceptions are. Think of the Matrix. I think second to Scripture, the Matrix is one of the most powerful descriptors of the human experience and narrative. And spoiler,
are you quoting from the book of the Wachowski brothers?
I am,
yeah.
but only the first one, not any of the trilogies. They get a little weird.
They're the Apocrypha.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in the Matrix, you've got this scene where Neo has come out of the Matrix. He's been unplugged, and Morpheus is having to explain to him what the Matrix even is. Here is the dream world that you've been living in. You need to understand what reality is.
Yeah.
Contrasted against this, thing.
And then the girl in the red dress, right?
Girl in the red dress. Yeah, okay. Exactly. So
that's why I wore this shirt for you, bro.
There you go. So What Neo had to do before he was able to learn the truth is that he had to unlearn the falsehoods that he had grown up with. So that's the first step, is we have to unlearn deceptions. That's a very hard thing to do because so many of us have grown up with the traditions of our fathers. We don't know what we don't know, right? We know our world. We have all our cultural baggage. We have all of our biases and everything. And so one of the big things that I say is you need to realize that when we think of the enemy, the politicians, the pundits, the propagandists, at the end of the day, these are a cabal of elitists who are trying to persuade us to give them our money and power. And so they are the enemy. And how are they going to try and accomplish this? Well, they want us to realize or believe that the chains that they have put around our wrists and ankles are not actually chains. They want us to think that we are free, right? I think it was a Goethe quote where he says that none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free. And so that's the best way. You don't want the people to revolt against you if you're a ruler. You want them to be subdued and think that things are just fine and not realize how unfree that they are. And so we have to unlearn deceptions. And I think since the government is at the core of this triumvirate, as we said before the break, this cabal of elitists, since this is really all about the government and those in power that we're talking about, can we really expect a government school to teach children the truth, the true nature about this enemy I think the question answers itself. What we're talking about is public schools, that they are structurally incapable of teaching the rising generation the true nature of government power, about these consent engineers, about the Lusitania, Naira, and the Iraq War, and all these instances in which our freedom has been diminished. People's lives have been lost. Our taxpayer dollars have been wasted, all because people bought into lies that were spoon-fed to them for a long time. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the greatest thing that parents can do, if they want to spare their children the negative effects of the mind war, is to not enroll their children in a government school. And if you have to, or if you choose to, you have to realize that the burden is so much higher on you to provide your children an antidote or a counter agent when they come home, realizing that they have been bombarded by curricula and teachers and all kinds of propaganda in the institution designed to help them buy into this narrative. You're intentionally plugging your children into the matrix, saying, okay, this is how the world works, go forth and learn. But surrendering your child's mind during their most formative years to people who are our ideological adversaries, people who do not share our worldview, and people who are at the service of a system that is designed to keep us in control.
And half these people got Stockholm syndrome from the system itself,
sure,
and will actively oppose you if you try and say, hey, red flag, I call BS. Now, one quick question. You're advocating for homeschooling as an antidote for the, effectively the brainwashing, we could say, of public education, right?
It could be homeschooling, it could be private schooling. Realize that homeschooling is not a cure-all. Plenty of parents homeschool poorly in the sense that they recreate within the four walls of their home all of the disadvantages of government-run education. They'll use the curriculum and they'll have the same authoritarian teaching style and all these things. And so I speak at a lot of homeschool conferences, and this is one of my main messages that I drive, is that true homeschooling, when done right, is not just education inside your home. It's a totally different rethinking of how we educate children and inspire them to follow their interests and learn about a world that they're curious about, rather than being forced to learn the same thing at the same age in the same way as everybody else. And getting away from the authoritarian model that says, I'm the teacher, I'm the trusted curriculum, you need to regurgitate what I tell you and cram your head full of stuff like the quadratic equation and, all this, useless facts that we learn when we're kids. So sure, yes, homeschooling, private schooling, microschooling, all these alternatives that exist. Really, at the end of the day, what I'm calling for and what I talk about in the book is parental intentionality, because you can still protect your kids from the mind war if your kids are going to public school. It's just that much harder to do. Like here's an example from the Soviets. So Hungary, the Hungarian Revolution, fascinating history.
Yeah, they were free for like 7 days or 8 days,
yeah,
right?
Just a few days. They kick out the Soviets. They're like, oh my gosh, we actually
did it. And they
it.
just stuff their children on trains, like knowing the Soviets are back in a week or two, tops.
Not yet. A lot of them were gleeful, thinking that, oh wow, like we did it. We repelled them. They set up a radio. They commandeered their one radio station and started broadcasting messages of freedom. They started creating their own independent government. They started meeting together for church. They, started trying to rebuild their lives. Well, who had they repelled? They repelled the Soviets, but it was all these like young, inexperienced soldiers, and the tanks that were stationed in Hungary and left there were like the older ones that weren't very good, because the Soviets didn't really see Hungary as a threat. So when Hungary became a threat, when they repelled the Soviets came back with way more soldiers, way more experienced soldiers, and way bigger tanks. They crushed the rebellion. That is when people started fleeing, and many of them crossed into Austria at the Bridge of Andau. And one family in particular, the Hadjock family, they crossed this bridge, and in Austria, there's these like interviewers trying to document stories and learn what's happening. Tell us, what your lives have been like. And so Mr. and Mrs. Hadjock and their two kids, including, I think she was 13-year-old Vera, the daughter, start sharing their story. And Vera, this snappy, feisty 13-year-old, starts telling the interviewers about how much she had been subjected to propaganda in her classroom. We knew that it was lies. It was all garbage. They were trying to fill our minds with nonsense. It was everything I could do to, not pay attention to them and not have. And the interviewers like taking notes. Wow, like this girl's a firecracker. Whereas all the other kids that we interview, they're hollow shells of themselves. They're subdued. They're not talkative. They're not energetic.
Yeah, interesting.
And so they're like, wow. And they turn to the mom and they say, how is it that your daughter like thinks like this and is acting like this. Mrs. Hadjock said every night when the lights were out and the streets were empty, we would take our family down into the cellar. We would open the Bible. We would read from the Bible, and we would wash our children's minds of the filth that had been put in them that day at school.
Whoa.
Every single day, this level of intentionality where the Hadjock parents were like, we need to be diligent about this. We need to make sure that our children are not being subjected to all this garbage. It can't just be, our teachers are so nice, or, we live in a conservative community, or, none of this taken for granted stuff. None of this.
He'll get his testimony when he goes on a mission. I don't have to be a good parent or Sunday school teacher now.
Yeah, let the seminary teacher take care of it. I don't need it. No, this was a daily act of intentionality. That is how this 13-year-old could stand up, be a firecracker, call out the propaganda from her teachers, and try and stand for truth as much as she knew it as a 13-year-old. So at the end of the day, what I'm really calling for is just that level of intentionality so that parents can be on guard, realizing that especially today with, I've been astounded at how young children are on average today having cell phones where their parents for some reason are giving them the keys to the kingdom and just saying, okay, the world is at your fingertips, no parental controls, no nothing, right? We have to put up guards. We have to know what forces are trying to influence our children. This could be peers, it could be YouTube, it's TikTok, it's teachers, it's curricula, whatever it is. We have to have that level of intentionality. Otherwise, our children's minds are going to be forged and propagandized and influenced by people who do not share our worldviews. Over and over again, like with our Tuttle Twins books, I'll find these parents who say, you know what, our kids went off to college, and I was astounded that the freshman year, only a few months had passed, and my children, my daughter is now a social justice warrior, or a blue-haired, lefty, whatever, and the parents are befuddled. What happened? We thought that we were doing everything we should, and
you mean the worst parental generation America's ever seen? They were surprised.
They claim they are. They're like, I had no idea, and I'm like, okay, but where was your intentionality, right? Where were you engaged in talking to your children about these ideas, and not just accepting or assuming that they would learn them from someone else, or that their teachers or their seminary teachers or other adults in their lives would teach them? No, parents have to step up, and I think especially the parents who send their kids to public schools use it as a babysitting service. So those are some of the most disengaged parents when it comes to their children's intellectual development. So if we want that level of intentionality, fine, send your kids to public school, but you need to work that much harder to provide the counter agent and say, okay, what kind of stuff did you learn today? And I want to review your textbook too, and let's see this curriculum. My son was using this book just the other day in, what class was he in? It was like a history book. And they're using this book that's glorifying Woodrow Wilson. And and it's got all this stuff.
They've got the guy that runs the libertarian think tank, his kids in the class with a book that glorifies the progressive Woodrow Wilson. How did that PTA meeting go, bro?
Well, it's definitely not public school, so we're not talking PTA.
Oh, okay.
This was like a homeschool co-op kind of class, and they just picked again, as many parents and teachers do, homeschool parents. They'll just pick up the textbook, the curriculum, and they'll use that off the shelf, not realizing the garbage that's in there because they're not scrutinizing it. So I'm reading this book. It's glorifying Woodrow Wilson, who was a horrible racist, to say nothing of all of his other foibles and horrible policies that he pushed, signing the Federal Reserve Act, or shortly after the Federal Reserve coming on board. Anyway, so we're reading this book, and
being the first president to show Birth of a Nation in the White House? That's not a badge of honor for you,
That's
dog?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a great opportunity for me to sit down with my boy and say, here's an example where you've got this book that's trying to claim something as true, and you shouldn't simply passively accept that it is. But it's because I was on guard as a parent, realizing what he was learning. And if I wasn't, he would have been just, everyone would have taken for granted, oh yeah, Woodrow Wilson, great president, blah, 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 not realizing the nuance, the context. And so at the end of the day, the best thing that parents can do is to increase that level of intentionality.
Okay, but what are some, yes. Whenever I ask somebody, what'd they do to lose weight? Oh yeah, well you just got to work out, or oh, you just got to, calorically restrict. Okay. Yeah, but it kind of seems like that's almost too broad of a term for me. All right. I do well when somebody says, oh, the 30-30-30 rule. Within 30 minutes of waking up, consume 30 grams of protein and then exercise for 30 minutes with your heart rate over 130 or whatever,
Yep.
Don't take that as health advice. I probably misquoted it. All right. Anybody listen to me? I'm an idiot. Don't listen to me. But I will say I do function well as a creative person when there are some, standards, some actual specifics, shall we say. You mentioned that family that read from the Bible for an hour every night in secret behind Soviet censors and so on and so forth to cleanse the filth that had been put into their minds via propaganda every single night. I know some people are overwhelmed thinking, gosh, I already worked 2 jobs putting a roof over their head. And now you say I got to, hide in my basement and read the Bible every night. Like I can barely read myself. Right. So, what are some like simple basics that you find uniformly have worked?
Yeah. So I would say the first one is to acquire and read good books together with your kids, and not just, fiction, fun, fantasy stories, but like, this is why I write the Tuttle Twins books, because I want parents and kids to be able to read together powerful ideas and understand truth.
So you need a better PR firm that puts the models, with the Tuttle Twin books dressed up as the Statue of Liberty. See, that's what you need. That's what you're doing here. See, maybe this is like a dream within a dream, like Inception. You're bemoaning the public school so you can promote I see what you're doing.
You saw right through me. You saw right through me.
No, I'm just kidding. So,
I got to hire Bernays then.
Yeah, you got to hire Bernays. No, so you reading specific books. Now that's very interesting because one of the things that, for example, the church I go to every Sunday, we always call them the primary basics, right? You got to, go to church on Sunday, read your scriptures, say your prayers twice daily. And these are kind of the Disney Channel version of Christianity that we teach children from a young age, right? But what's so interesting is the consumption of written material, like the ancients used to call the education of philosophy, is so important because it's almost like your brain's a muscle and it wiggles it. And if you're all exercising this muscle together, hopefully you'll learn something together. So I find that interesting. That you say the reading of good books. Is there any data or studies you've seen that have talked about why that works and why it's so effective? Or is it just kind of the age-old story of narratives creating social fabric that binds us?
There is data, but the particular point that I want to focus on is that children learn best through imitation of behavior, right? Do what I say, not what I do, et cetera, And so if we want our children to be protected in the mind war, if we want them to stand for truth and understand what truth is, we need to model for them what it looks like to be an investigator of truth, someone who cares about ideas, someone who follows current events, someone who thinks critically about what's going on. And so these parents bemoan that their children are not critically thinking and they're just swept along in whatever cultural trends. But what are we as parents doing about it to show our children what that looks like? So apart from reading good books, I think it's having dinner conversation starters where you can have engaging conversations, of what's happening in current events or okay, let's watch this news clip and then talk about what we think about it. So many parents have been kind of repelled from engaging in what might be termed controversial topics or whatever, where they stay away from it and therefore deprive their children of an opportunity in a safe environment to develop a level of critical thinking that can empower them out in the world when they are being bombarded with all kinds of different ideas. And so I think another specific thing, apart from the reading, is that it doesn't have to be over dinner. It could be, driving in the car, but building a habit as a family about talking about these engaging, culturally relevant, historical, political type of issues so that your child can start to develop that critical thinking muscle. Another one that I think is important is to cultivate a list of trusted journalists and individuals. So I get a lot of people who...
Interesting. Okay.
I get a lot of people come to me and say, I know the news is all propaganda. What do I do? And I said, I think the truth tellers are the ones who are independent, the Substack generation, the Glenn Greenwalds. Let's use Glenn Greenwald for
the WardRadios.
The WardRadio example.
Thank you.
Right. what you guys do this well on WardRadio. What you're looking for is people who think sufficiently independently that they are even willing to challenge their own tribe. because this is not commonly done in the media. It's the Fox News versus MSNBC, and you're always wrong and we're right, and we're not going to talk about our warts and bumps and bruises. So what you're looking for is, and I don't give parents a list because a lot of them just want the list. Okay, who are the truth-telling journalists? Just no, you have to do your own homework, because part of the process is learning how to investigate and think critically and evaluate. I'm going to be depriving you of that if I just spoon-feed it to you. But to use an example, Glenn Greenwald, here's a guy who is a left-leaning liberal. He's homosexual. He lives in Brazil. He's just your lefty's lefty. And
your 90s lefty.
90, lefty. Yeah, true. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, leftism has come pretty far.
That's a very good point. And he'd agree with that, I'm sure. So here's a guy who, during the Bush years, excoriated the Republicans for all of their pro-war shenanigans in the Middle East, and that's how he kind of made his name at first, was to challenge what Bush and everybody was doing. And then along comes Obama, and he is just as critical of Obama and his team as anybody else. He made his name because he was such a truth-telling journalist that when Edward Snowden was ready to leak all of the NSA secret files, he chose Glenn because he had seen, here's a guy who's standing up to his own tribe. When Obama is in power and he's droning American citizens in the Middle East and killing all these people, no due process, no nothing, Glenn is calling him out. His own tribe, people that he normally would be with. So that is what we're after. Cultivate the list. Could be people on YouTube, could be Substack, could be podcasts, could be independent journalists like Matt Taibbi and these guys who are just trying to build their own thing and become supported by the crowd so that they are not suppressed by editorial censorship or corporate priorities or anything else. And so if we want to understand what's happening in the world and gather information from different sources, I think we got to have our list of trusted journalists that we can follow so that we can receive information that we're more likely to think is truthful than the propaganda that we get elsewhere.
Okay, so first you mentioned first line of defense in the mind wars is unlearn existing deceptions.
That's right.
Okay. Number 2 was read books together as a family as part of what you call parental intentionality.
Yeah.
All right. And then number 3 is cultivate a list of trusted news sources of information, because at the end of the day, we can't just turn off the news. We're participants in a society. As Plato said, no man is an island. So we have to ingest news. So develop a trusted list. Is there a 4th thing on that list, or do you think that's the good starting 3?
There's a few more, but before we wrap, I want to take us to the next step. So once you've been unlearning deceptions and learning truth, the question is then, what do we do about that? And every man who's been warned has to warn his neighbor, as the scripture says. And so the important thing to do next is not just to I know all this truth now, yay. Instead, it's to say, there's a time for me to stand up and speak out. There's a time for me to share this truth that I've obtained, whether that's starting a book club, starting a YouTube channel, starting a podcast, writing an op-ed, hosting a little cottage meeting with the local mayor and a bunch of your neighbors, whatever it is. We have to stand up and we have to speak out. The story that I love to share most recently is one of our Tuttle Twins readers, Jaiden, who last fall went massively viral after I shared the video that his mom recorded of him getting kicked out of school. Why did he get kicked out?
Okay.
He had a patch on his backpack. The patch was the yellow Gadsden flag, the "Don't Tread on Me."
Yeah, with the original rattlesnake, the OG
right.
American flag.
That's
baby.
it. Yeah, Benjamin Franklin, unite or die. It was the 13 segments of the snake all coming together. And so this was a very pro-American colonial revolutionary flag, and yet his school, the administrators, the teacher, the vice principal, all claimed that flag had its origins in slavery, is what they said.
Oh, you're kidding me. Is this kid right here, right?
There's Jaiden. So this had nothing to do with slavery whatsoever. And so Jaiden, who knew his American history because he's been reading our Tuttle Twins books, and he knew about the power and the importance of free speech, because again, he's been reading these books for years, he said, I'm not taking the patch off. And so they kicked him out of school. He gets sent home.
Wait, this lady right here?
This is the vice principal.
That looks like a 2024 Karen that would. Like the DMV mid-level bureaucrat that wants to virtue signal whatever junk she was spoon-fed by the media.
She apparently lost 10 pounds after this ordeal because his video, Jaiden's video that we shared, like his mom secretly recorded this conversation where they're sitting down with this vice principal. She provided me the video. I shared it on Twitter. 50 million views. All the national news outlets are covering this thing. Everyone's paying attention for 48 hours before they move on to the next thing, and so this poor lady got beat up by all kinds of people. But the school backed down. Tons of people were calling and emailing. My point with all this is that here's a boy, I think he's 13, 12, if I remember right. Here's a boy who knew the truth. He had been reading. His mom had been reading these books with him. He had been engaged in these conversations with his mom. And then he had an opportunity to stand up.
He's a miniature Helmuth Huber.
Absolutely.
Yeah, rock on.
Absolutely. And so that's what we're after. We want people to understand these ideas, not just so that they have some intellectual satisfaction about, I can play Jeopardy now and answer all these, questions. No, the point is that we got to stand up for this stuff. We have to preach it. We have to share it with others. And so that's what we want from families, is to get them more civically engaged, not just to vote and get your little sticker. Like, that's just the most minimal garbage civic engagement. No, we want you to engage.
Yeah, we can ballot harvest if we want your vote. You know what I'm saying?
That's the Democrats. We don't do that. We have to be more engaged. We have to challenge authority. We have to think critically about what we're hearing from the media, from the politicians. We have to show up at the Capitol or at the city council meeting. We have to run for office ourselves. We have to support other good people. But we can't do any of this if we don't know what's going on, if we don't know the truth. And so if I had a call to action at all in Mind Wars, it's that we have to unlearn deceptions, we have to learn truth, and we have to share it with others.
Okay, no, this is too awesome. As always, it's always at the end when things start getting awesome and we're cruising and we're rolling that we gotta pay some bills and come up on a commercial break. So as always, I could talk with you forever, but we can't. However, I'm gonna read your book, Mind Wars. All right, I've already started. I've loved every inch of everything I've read. I'm gonna finish it, and we're gonna have to get you back.
Let's do it.
How can people find you that listen on the radio or watch us on YouTube if they want to read Mind Wars, if they want to see what the Tuttle Twins are about? How can people reach you? How can people find you? How can they smell more of what you're stepping in, my man?
So the book is on Amazon and other places where you buy books. So you can go search for Mind Wars, Connor Boyack. It'll pop up. I'm at connorboyack.com, CONNOR, connorboyack.com, all over social media. And the Tuttle Twins books are at TuttleTwins.com. We've got over 30 books from toddlers to teens. We've got a cartoon with Angel Studios. We're trying to produce a lot of content so that families, like I'm talking about, can engage in these ideas, learn about them, so that they can then stand up just like Jaiden did. We need 1 million more Jaidens. That's my goal. And so if your family wants to be a part of that, go check out TuttleTwins.com.
All right, awesome. This is great, guys. For this and more, please check us out at WardRadio.com.
I just feel so good.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Before you go, please make sure that you like the video, share it with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please let this be the video in which we earn your subscription, and that you press the alert button so you're alerted to all of our fun live streams and standalone videos and community posts. Also, if you'd like to help us out, please consider joining the channel. Members get all kinds of cool perks and benefits. They get early access to a lot of our videos and special emoticons and emojis during our live streams and preferential treatment there. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, we have a super cool Discord. If you'd like to join our Discord, check us out on wardradio.com. There's a link to the Discord there. Also, you can sign up there for our newsletter. Our newsletter is a lot of fun, and you can put your email address in there. And if you'd like to contribute to the program, please consider looking us up on Venmo or on the CashApp. We're on both of those platforms. Also, if you just want to keep watching more content, right about here and probably right about here are going to be some more videos. Please check those out. And as always, for this and more, please make sure that you look us up and check us out at wardradio.com.